Hi everyone, this is Michael Bohannes from Content 360, and in today's video I want to talk to you about trade shows. So this is for everybody running a small to mid-sized B2B company, and if you are considering or are regularly going to trade shows and like speak at events and so on, then I just wanted to make this video for you. I was about to say short video, but I think it's going to be a little bit longer this time. I wanted to make this video for you in consideration of all the benefits that you can get at a trade show and where else you can get those benefits, because there are alternatives to many of the trade show benefits, and it's frankly not everybody's cup of tea to go to a trade show, to constantly network, to be very extroverted and to have to sales pitch 100 times a day and so on. So in this video we will cover all the benefits that you get from a trade show and whether there are any alternatives that are as cheap and efficient, or possibly and hopefully cheaper and more efficient than that. And then secondly, I want to take you through the basics of video publishings, namely because one of the main reasons why I'm making this video is to give you an idea that many of the benefits you have from going to trade shows and speaking at events, you can have by running your own video channel. And I also want to show you that it's not difficult at all, it's not expensive to do that in a way that is really beneficial for you and builds a long-term habit that creates a trusted bond between you and your audience, and hopefully out of this audience, customers. So I'm not necessarily arguing against trade shows per se. What I'm arguing against is for B2B people to consider trade shows to be, and when I say trade shows, I mean everything when it comes to speaking at events and so on. I'm arguing against the idea of having this as one of the main ways to acquire new customers and not seeing the bigger picture that there are maybe alternatives to it, especially if you are doubtful of the ROI that you're getting on trade shows and speaking at events, and whether you think that this is really the right thing for you, whether it fits your personality. Because if it doesn't fit your personality, people notice it and then your results will suffer. So those are the two things I want to talk to you about. So over the last couple of months, I have been speaking to a lot of CEOs and marketing people at B2B companies, and I asked them about trade shows specifically and speaking at events and what they get out of it. And whether they have a good ROI. And they told me, they kind of split into two different camps. One camp was very confident that they are getting a good ROI on it, and the other camp wanted to be really confident that they're getting a good ROI. And the question for me was, and I'm being only slightly tongue-in-cheek here, the question for me in all these cases was, have they done any real analysis? Because very often they kind of, whenever you felt that they said, yeah, we're getting good ROI on it, that you kind of feel that there's no real good analysis behind it. And then at the same time, quite often they were a little bit cynical about them, and they were implying that, not really, it's all pretty useless, but I mean, I have the budget, so what am I going to do with it? I'm going to spend it. So I think they are quite justified in being doubtful about the value and the ROI of trade shows. I mean, when you go online and you just Google for a little while, you realize that many people are quite doubtful and skeptical of the value of trade shows. And frankly, it's not only the trade shows themselves, because very often the organizers, it's very expensive to go there, and very often the organizers are mainly caring about the audience so that they get a lot of footfall. But then, is it really the right footfall for you? So generally, it is quite justified to be a little bit skeptical about the value of these things. And on the other hand, it's also that some people are simply not trade show material. So you need to be extroverted. If you are going for a trade show and if you are going to be there, spend a day or two, you really need to be positive, you need to be constantly networking, you need to be willing to make a pitch 100 times a day. Because if you are not, then people will notice that with you. I'm sure you've been to conferences. I was just at one in, I believe it was in October, where you kind of totally feel when somebody is just completely not with you and they're just rattling off their sales script, and you see they're completely absent, and that does more harm than good, because I definitely didn't, there was no connection. Obviously when you're absent you cannot make a connection with everyone, and so some people are simply not I don't want to say cut out for it, but it's simply not their cup of tea, but yet they still go because they just don't see the alternative, okay? And then frankly, when you look at it from a first principle kind of view, the idea of being in a place, right? If you really boil it down to basics, and if you think you're in a place where there's supposedly customers, relevant people who coming your way, and you have to have linear conversation with them, i.e. one-to-one, or maybe if you're lucky 1-3 when a small crowd gathers, and you are talking to them in this way, and you have to repeat your pitch over and over. In the days of the internet, this sounds like a really weird thing, Yes, I know there is a certain element of interpersonal connection that you only get when you are really in person. But then, is that really worth the relative nonsense of talking to 100 people and telling them the same thing over and over instead of, just broadcasting it once and having it, for example, in the form of a video? So those are kind of things you have to kind of consider that when you are looking at alternatives to trade shows, because it's not just the money and the time that you spend there, but it's also kind of like ancillary costs that you have. And to a certain degree, I also want to take into context the kind of emotional toll that these things take, because it takes you out of your daily routines, and you cannot, it's probably like half a day before and all the organization before that and a half a day after that you're like still in there. So it takes a lot out of you to go to a trade show. Okay, so let's go into now and let's analyze it systematically. Let's go into the benefits of trade shows and let's think whether there are any alternatives to these benefits. So one of the benefits I want to mention first is market research. You obviously are there in order to speak to prospective customers, to understand their needs. It maybe is going to inform a new product iteration or a completely new product, or you will get ideas for price sensitivity and so on. So it's really valuable to be there and to talk to people. But then the question is, how many high quality conversations will you really have on that day? Take aside, so let's say on a really good day, let's say you're staying at a stand, and at a really good day, are you going to have one quality conversation per every 15 minutes? So at 8 hours, that means 8 hours, 15 minutes, you're going to have maybe 30 conversations a day. And then out of those, I reckon, I'm pretty sure that half of them will be time wasters. You know them, we know them all, where you kind of totally see in the moment that these people are never going to buy from you. And then the remaining 16 are possibly, good and interesting, but still the real nuggets, the valuable info maybe is going to come from, let's say, 8 to 10 people. Right? So whole day standing there, having a stand, and you are there, you're talking maybe to 8 to 10 people who will have interesting insights that you can then kind of write down and say, okay, these are my customer insights. That is not a great benefit. Speaking to 8 to 10 people, you can get that much, much easier and much cheaper. I want to talk to you about 2 ways how you can do that. Namely, there are tools that are normally being used for B2C, customer research, market research, but you can also use them for B2B. So let's go quickly to the computer and let me show you what I mean with that. There are 2 tools that I want to show you, and they are SurveyMonkey and AdTest. Alrighty, so we are now in SurveyMonkey, and what you can do here is normally SurveyMonkey, as you probably know, is a tool where you can just simply create a survey and then you send that as a link to anyone who should respond to that survey. But what you can also do within the tool is they have audience panels that are global. They have like millions of people worldwide that they have classified into specific buckets by all kinds of demographic data and household income and jobs and positions and industries and so on. And you can access these people and ask them questions. So when you click here, and you go to audience, and you go start now, you can then see here that it offers you, well, how many people do you want to talk to? So you see here's 200. You can, for the sake of the argument here, let's decrease it down to 15. Take it down to 15. And then you can, there's a lot of different targeting options by location, country, and region. Let's say we're using the United States. and then show all. And then within all these demographics, you have employment options and lifestyle, household, health and food, technology, and all of that. But we're going to go back up to the topic of employment. And here you can see job level, job functions, all options, and so on. So let's go to, for example, let's pick industry. And let's say we're picking advertising and marketing. And we want to, within these companies, no, not sales, we want to speak, by job level. We can talk to middle management in advertising. So let's say this is your target audience, and you can see that it gives you projected estimated delivery 6th of January. Today is the 2nd as I'm recording this, and you can get results. If you pay up a little bit, you can get results one day earlier, and it's going to cost you £10 per response. Now that is a pretty good price when you compare that to the cost that you would spend at a trade show, where you would probably spend like 10 times as much, and you'd have 20% of the amount of probably of conversations that you had. Now, granted, those are written responses, and it's going to get a little bit more expensive if you ask them more survey questions than these 10, and if you have more targeting options and so on. So it can increase a little bit, but still, you can get a lot of really good qualitative data with this. And then in the end of the survey, you can even ask them, hey, would you mind, can you spend 15-20 minutes on the phone with us? And if you offer them some relevant goodie for them, maybe they actually will. It has happened that I've ran these kind of surveys and people have responded positively and even jumped on the phone with me. So that is one option. The other one is AdTest, which is a British company, so buy local. And if you here start from scratch, you can hear after you, first of all, you built the survey, but let's go into the audience bucket here. And here in the audience, very similarly like in SurveyMonkey, you can start from scratch, and here you can then customize the audience. You can again go by employment type and employment sector. You can go again, for example, advertising, and you can pick professional experience, let's say manager, and employment sector we set advertising. And that's it. And we have 250 out of 95.8 possible matches in this bucket. So when it, so it decreased 250 out of 98 possible matches. So this changed based on our change. Well, you have to see in some industries, SurveyMonkey is better. In some industries, AdTest will be better. Let's see if we have audience. Where did we say home region? Yeah, so you see, so this is for England. In SurveyMonkey, we picked the United States. So that's why there's fewer here. You have to see which tool works better for you, but both of them are very good, and they usually work on the same kind of panels of data. So you will probably have very similar audiences that this will be exposed to. Then it's only a matter of taste. I have found SurveyMonkey to be a little bit cheaper than AdTest, but I don't have a big enough sample size. So you need to test for yourself. Good. Anyway, so that's it for SurveyMonkey and AdTest. So those were two options that you can use to get market research and to ask your target audience for their opinions on pretty much anything under the sun. Those were SurveyMonkey and AdTest. And then of course you can also run more traditional methods like going on Facebook and running a Facebook ad there. And instead of asking people to come to a landing page and convert there to become a customer or to get a call with you, you can simply ask them, hey, we have some market research questions. We would appreciate your time to spend on the phone, and you can again offer them some goodies and so on, and that you can do via Facebook ads. And then of course, even more traditional if you want, you can go on LinkedIn and simply approach people one-to-one and ask them to spend some time with you. Granted, you're not going to get a 50% response rate on this, but if you ask 50 people, you can easily get 5 people who will jump on the phone with you if you present them with something interesting in return. So those are some good ways, and of course I'm not suggesting if you're the CEO, you will not be doing this yourself. But if you look at it from a holistic cost point of view, the market research aspect of going to trade shows is probably not worth the money you pay to be at a trade show. So that was point 1, market research as a benefit of a trade show that probably you can get more value if you use alternative methods. Let's look at number 2. And the benefit number 2 is close sales. Yes, many people close sales when they go to trade shows. and that's perfectly okay. And if you have a track record in doing that, and it really is good value, so you go there, you spend a little bit, but what you get back in customer lifetime value is so much higher, by all means do it. And if the context permits it, of course, then it's definitely useful. But my question to you is, do you on your website have an optimal funnel structure set up? Meaning you have ways how you can get new audience members, new prospects to come to your website because you present them with a really interesting offer. For example, you have a good Facebook ad campaign or AdWords campaign, or on LinkedIn you have good content, for example. And then you direct people to your landing page, and on that landing page you have a really good value proposition. You maybe have a video where you speak to them, and then you incentivize them to sign up, to give you their email addresses so that they can get your newsletter, or to right away schedule a phone call with you. Do you have ways how they can directly schedule a call with you instead of going with a back and forth on scheduling? But why not have a Calendly plugin on that page where they can simply just choose a time that fits them and that integrates into your calendar? And all of that, like, do you have a process that allows for that, to convert a prospective, a complete stranger into somebody who's mildly interested in you and is willing to talk to you? Unless you have that perfectly built, I recommended you do that, because in the end, after all, this is your way of, essentially you are building your audience. You are building your asset there. When you go to a trade show, essentially you are renting their audience generation capabilities. And so I wonder, for closing sales, isn't it better to first have your own house in order before you go out in chasing new leads? Because otherwise you have something of a leaky bucket. And there's a great example of somebody who is consciously declaring that they never go to trade shows, never go to events, never speak at events, and so on. And instead they have absolutely mastered the craft of converting people coming from all kinds of online channels onto their website and registering them for in their case, for a webinar, from which they then convert them into a customer. And that is called, the company is called consulting.com, and the CEO is called Sam Ovens. And he is running, essentially it's a training program for people to start their business, and a kind of an accelerator to people who already run a business. So it's essentially, if you're a six-figure business, then he helps you to kind of systematize your business processes and get to 7 figures. And so he's quite well known in the community that, and full disclosure, I'm one of his customers. I'm a big fan of his. And he says that he never in his life, and he's very successful, the company is making some $50 million. He's never in his life been at an event, speaking at an event. He doesn't do other people's podcasts and so on. He's done a few in the past, but very, very few. And he says, I never speak on stages. And that is a conscious decision of his, because from his point of view, he is, by going on somebody else's stage, he's essentially just renting an audience. And instead he says he wants to build his own audience. He wants to acquire them, hook them in with a great offer, and then do that. So it is absolutely possible in the B2B world to build a great business without ever going to a single trade show or event. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but just be aware of the alternatives. Because if you don't have a good conversion funnel on your site, you are really missing out, and it is a leaky bucket that you could, if you fixed it, you could get your customer acquisition cost really, really low. And especially over time, it's an asset that you build. And I look at 5 to 10, usually 5, on average 5 company websites a day, because although Content 360 is doing really well, and I'm doing, whenever there's overflow work, I give it to freelancers or partners that I work with. But I still make it a habit of reaching out to approximately 5 companies a day, and I always look at their websites and see, do they actually convert me if I'm a stranger? Do they convert me into like a certain path? Do they want me to go down a certain route so that they can convert me? That's the point of a website. And honestly, I have not analyzed this scientifically, but my gut feel tells me it's at least 2/3 that don't have this process nailed at all. Like, they are beyond hopeless, like in terms of getting a customer to get them to a point where they actually want to talk to you. And I'm talking B2B companies here. Obviously, B2C companies are different. The likes of e-commerce companies and so on are very good in getting people to do what they want to do. But companies like specialist consultancies or B2B software companies who don't have like a free version, but that have only, sorry, not a free version, but I mean, B2B SaaS companies who have like only an expensive SaaS product where you have to talk to them, get a demo and so on. So I would say 70%, easily almost 80% of companies don't have a really good method of getting people from, converting them from stranger to, hey, I want to talk to you. So that is the thing. If you want to go to trade shows to close sales, if the context permits that you close right then and there, by all means, do it. But first, I would suggest that you fix your own sales process. And when it comes to online conversions, just make sure that you have a clear process. Okay, so that was point number 2, close sales. The next benefit is you want to go to trade events because you want to broadcast your sales message. And that is, of course, understandable. And you definitely, especially when you speak at an event, you have the opportunity always to broadcast your sales message. Now, that's clear. But then again, just think about it. You're at a trade show, and how many people will you actually really touch? If you are lucky and you're speaking at a big stage and there's a couple of thousand people in the audience, all right, that's pretty good. And then on a one-to-one basis, you're talking to them on, maybe to at best 100 people overall at the trade show. Just compare that and compare the cost. Speaking slots cost money. Compare the cost of the speaking slot with what you can get, how easily you can get 1,000 viewers online. Like I'm telling you, this video that I'm doing right now is going to get some 2,000 views easily. Like all my other videos on LinkedIn, on LinkedIn alone, so far my best videos, and I've been only doing this is like my 4th video or so. And on LinkedIn, I got like between 1,500 and 2,500. Then there's Facebook, where I also have a few views. So overall, I think I average some 2,000, 2,500 views per video. Now granted, that is not a view of the whole video necessarily. Some people only look at sections. That's okay. But still, I don't pay to get these 2,000 views. It's just my LinkedIn page. So just imagine how much more exposure you get by putting a video up on LinkedIn. And yes, of course, in my case, my network is pretty wide, so not everybody will be a relevant person. But still, it is, I work in the topic of marketing, in startups, in technology companies and so on, so my network skews heavily there. And I have gotten new leads coming from those videos already. Like I have one new customer that came in December from just me publishing videos. So the exposure you get in terms of getting your sales message out, and as you see, this is not a sales message from me. I'm telling you how to reframe your mind when it comes to thinking about trade shows. But I'm not selling you. I mean, I'm going to tell you in the end what we do, and maybe there is a match. Maybe you're interested. But it's not a sales message, yet I'm still reaching you. So just consider when you are going to trade shows and you think, yeah, I can get my message out there, consider the alternative. Imagine if you did a video channel, what that could give you. Cool, so that was broadcast your sales message. The 4th benefit, and there's 5 of them, we're getting close, is that you build trust and you build relationships. Now, the question is, how much trust can you actually build in 15 minutes? 15 minutes of a conversation. I don't think it's a great lot, because trust is being built as something over time. It's almost impossible to build real trust with somebody who you speak for 15 minutes, because everybody can fake it for 15 minutes. There is a very good article that I recommend you check out. It's by Mark Suster, and it's called Lines, Not Dots. And Mark Suster is an investor. And in this article, he talks about how good entrepreneurs who successfully raised from him, how they behaved in order to secure the investment. And the way they did it is not to simply come to the investor and pitch them and say, can you give me money? No, they came and they just said, hey, I have this business, it is doing this, and we're doing quite well. So I just wanted to briefly talk to you, introduce myself, and that's pretty much it. I hope you're interested. If the investor is worth his salt, he's going to take the meeting if it's in his domain, because why wouldn't he? It's like this is kind of his job to kind of be aware of what's going on in the market. So he takes the meeting, and the entrepreneur, instead of pitching him for money, just simply says, look, this is what we do, these are my challenges, and this is our growth trajectory, and that's the plans. There we have. Great, nice, that's it. And meeting is done. And then let's say they meet again in 6 months' time. The investor can then ask the entrepreneur, hey, I met you 6 months ago, how's the business going? And the entrepreneur can say, yep, great, we've had new clients, we had great traction, we added 10 employees and so on. That is what Mark Suster calls lines, not dots. So he met him here, from your perspective, he met him here, and then the entrepreneur went there, and he sees that, there is a good trajectory. That is how you build reputation as an entrepreneur who wants to pitch to an investor. But this is also how you build a relationship and trust in somebody who you meet. So if this is somebody who you meet at a trade show, and then you see 2 months later on LinkedIn, he's completely switched industries, and then you see that 3 months later, they post some kind of a weird article that has some like conspiracy theories over them and so on, and you see, that's good to know, this person is a bit of a weirdo. And so that is a line that is kind of heading downwards from your perspective, again, heading down. But the way how to build a relationship, and I'm coming back again to the topic of providing great content to your audience, is simply by creating and publishing good content and to be just present, to be consistent, to show regularly, for example, your new clients and to show them off to the world and say, look, this is what we have achieved with our clients and so on. And to be consistent and be there regularly. And the way how you can do that is by having a content channel where you on a regular basis serve your audience with great content. And a video channel is a particularly effective way of doing that. I'm going to tell you why. So that is the fourth one, where I'm thinking, if you go to trade shows because you want to build trust and build relationships, consider doing a content marketing practice where you are kind of in their lives on a small level, where they can find you and they see that you're constantly active, you're having interesting thoughts, you're adding value to them and so on. Consider doing that instead of going to trade shows. Final benefit that I could come up with from when it comes to going to trade shows is there's a certain element of social proof by being on a stage and by, talking about something reasonably coherent. Now, of course, we all know that at trade shows, you can essentially buy the speaking slots. So I would suggest that the social proof that you get, although there is one, naturally there is one. If you just go to an event and somebody's on stage, you think that this person has something valuable to say. So you think highly of them. But when you then actually, again, boil it down to first principles, anybody can buy that slot on the speaking stage. So everything that it actually in reality proves is that this person has enough money to be a speaker at a trade show. And I'm not so sure if this is in itself a sign of trustworthiness and of, somebody who you'd want to do business with only because they can afford to be on a stage and speak at a trade show. You don't trust somebody only because they have a Ferrari, right? So it's a bit of a dodgy one. Again, the validation you can get from having regular content output online is like a less flashy, a less spectacular kind of validation. But if you put out regular content that is original, that is fresh, and you get many views, you get some comments, you get likes and so on, that is a great way of validation, especially if the comments and likes come from people who are in the industry, who themselves are, good, high quality people. So to wrap up, those were the 5 benefits from trade shows that I believe you can get elsewhere for much less money, much more efficiently, and in a way that fits your personality if this is you. If you really dislike going to trade shows and you want to consider alternatives, then start your own video channel. And this is what I'm going to get into for the next couple of minutes to suggest to you how you can cut through the noise to a certain extent and create regular content that your audience will really be engaged with. This is now the second part, launching a video channel and starting a habit of producing high quality video. Now, why video? Why am I not telling you to launch a blog or something like that? Of course you should, and you can launch a blog by all means. I think every B2B company should have a blog, if only for SEO purposes. But the audience is about 10x that you're gonna get from a video. I can tell you again, I mentioned this video will probably get some 2,000 views over time, and over its lifetime, it's probably gonna get 3,000 views. That's what I expect. And that's only now, and I'm just only starting. Like, this is now Content 360 in its embryonic form still. You know, at this point, it is just me as the main person, and I work with freelancers and some experts and specialists. Just imagine how that's gonna be. This is gonna be my back catalog, and it's gonna be in my back catalog forever. And as long as I live, this thing is gonna be here and ready, and people will be able to watch it and to hopefully find something valuable in it. So the audience of video is about 1,000 times bigger than from written content. Sorry, not 1,000 times. I would say 10 times. 10 times bigger than from regular content. Because simply video is more, we're drawn to faces. Even if it's a face like mine, you're drawn to it because you think, what does this person have to tell? And so it's much more unique than than standard written content, because people are just used to written content online all the time, and the effect that a video has is just much more rare, especially if it's somebody who you know is running a certain business. It's not some kind of slick production of a corporate company, but it's kind of homemade and so on. So there is an element of uniqueness. It is also more immediate relationship building. When you see how somebody talks, how somebody behaves, what kind of jokes they make and so on, you kind of build rapport with them. It's much harder to do that, especially in our ADD-ridden culture when you are just writing, okay? And then finally, a good benefit of doing videos like these is you practice your public speaking. I'm sure you caught me by now doing ums and ahs and so on, but I'm consciously trying to reduce them. And it is a great way to practice that. And I've gotten better already if you compare with my last few videos. So let's talk about, when I say videos, what do I actually mean? What kind of videos? I would suggest that you simply, whenever you have an idea for putting out content, you just immediately think, let's do it, of course, as a blog post, just for the SEO value. But then also, let's just talk about that piece of content. For reference, you can go to one of my earlier videos, which is where I talked about the concept of content market fit. I first wrote this as a blog post, and then I realized that's kind of cool, and I'm gonna just simply talk about it. And I talked about it, was one of my most popular videos so far, which is essentially you just talk like you would tell somebody who you had a 10-minute conversation with if they asked you, hey, so what's this content market fit thing that you came up with? And so I tell people. And you just talk into the camera and tell people, and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. No, I'm using a few graphics here. I'm putting a few images in this video and so on. None of this you need to do. It's optional. You can simply just talk to the camera, boom, upload, and you're done. And so that is one kind of way how I would suggest you start to form a habit of doing video outside of just doing text. Because again, it's so much more impactful and will have a much higher reach. A couple of ideas for what kind of videos will have beneficial effect and what kind of videos will work for your audience. It's kind of 4 categories. One of them is frequently searched questions that your audience has. And with that I mean when somebody wants to do specifically something that is difficult for them that they don't really know how, and you have the answer for that. So give you one example. I was, over the New Year period, I was doing my taxes. And at some point, HMRC, if you don't know, this is the UK tax authority, threw some kind of term at me that I didn't know what the hell is this. And so I Googled it and I found a video of an accounting firm somewhere in Swindon. And they put out videos where they explain exactly this term. And the videos are relatively poorly made. The guy is not a good speaker and so on, but still, he answered my question. And I still remember them. They're called AMS Accountancy in Swindon. And I really appreciated that I found them and that they gave me this information. I remember them now. And if I ever need accounting services beyond the company accountant that I'm using now already, they are on my radar and I'm grateful to them. That is amazing content marketing. And so frequently asked questions. Then controversy. Controversy is good. It breeds interest. It shouldn't be controversy for controversy's sake, but if you have an opinion that goes in your market, of course, that goes directly counter the majority opinion or conventional wisdom, use that. Use that and put out a post that recently Sam Ovens, the guy I mentioned before, put out a video where he essentially said, marketing is all bullshit, it's all about the product. And then, of course, he, cushioned this a little bit, but as a catchphrase, it was quite interesting and it got a lot of attention. So controversy is a good area for putting out content and especially video. Then new interesting concepts. If you have like an interesting idea, just put it out there. I mentioned the example of the idea that I had the other day about content market fit, which is where I took one concept from the startup world, which is product market fit, and I translated into the topic of content marketing, and I called it content market fit. I got a lot of kind of likes and attention for it because it's kind of like an interesting concept that helps the audience to see content production in a different light than they used to. So that is another way of engaging your audience. And how-to guides. How-to guides are slightly similar to point one that I mentioned, which are the frequently asked questions, but how-to guides are really useful for broader topics. Like for example, this video is a how-to creating your video channel, but it's not as specific a niche as, for example, what equipment to pick, which audio equipment to pick. That's more niche. That's more of a niche question. The how-to guide's a bit broader. So those four categories: frequently asked questions, controversy, new concepts, and how-to videos are great ways to engage your audience. And then when it comes to, let's go into the nitty-gritty of equipment and infrastructure. This is the last point. Now, the links for all of this I'm going to be talking about will be below the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be in the description. If you're watching this on the Content 360 website, it's going to be below this video, so just check them out. It's essentially what I use and what I've heard other people use. And in the end, especially, many people get hung up with equipment initially. They think they need to kind of have the best and so on. No. It really is much more about the quality of the content that you are putting out. If you talk in a pleasant way, if you don't have too many skips and gaps and so on, this is much more important than the equipment that you have. Nevertheless, you want to have proper equipment, but it's going to be much cheaper than you may anticipate. So first of all, as a video camera, you can use your phone, right? Phones are so good by now that you can absolutely use your phone. I myself, I'm using the Canon EOS 200D. It's a very small and very nifty SLR. I've been using it for all my videos and it's really good. It has very high capacity in terms of you can just use an SD card that has really high capacity and so on. And I just have it mounted in one corner of my office and it's just there and constantly stays there. And I don't have to do anything with it. If it was a phone, I would always have to mount it and so on. So consider that. Either you have an old phone that you can use for video, and I would recommend you actually use something that is not your day-to-day phone because of the need to constantly mount it and so on. If you only want to get started, if you just want to use your phone, that's fine, but you will always kind of have to somehow mount it on some stand, right? So that's that. Speaking of which, you need a stand. So I'm mentioning the link is going to be below, and the stand and a phone mount if that is what you are using for recording. Another thing that I would recommend you do is get yourself a softbox. A softbox is, well, I can actually show you. This is a softbox, and I'm using this especially, of course, now in the winter time. Softbox is absolutely essential, but even during the daytime, if you're recording in daytime, you'd never have enough light for video recording. It's always going to be like some gray, and it's not going to be good lighting if you don't have a softbox. So it's really cheap, and get that and just direct it at yourself from one particular angle. Usually you should do two angles. In my case, I have the other light behind me, which helps with the lighting as well. So just have one that is kind of strong and it kind of goes into your face so that your features really pop. All right, let's go into the topic of audio, because great video is usually, like 80% of good video is about good audio, especially for our purposes. You need to have decent voice recording so that people can listen to it. It's kind of at the sound level that normally videos are, so you're not too low, you're not too high. And for that, I recommend you using this lapel mic, which again, the link will be below the video. The lapel mic connects directly into the phone or any other recording device. On the phone, you can use a voice recording app. I myself am using an app called Voice Recorder on Android. There's many of them and they're free. So you can do that. It automatically connects and it records your voice just as you speak. Important to know, maybe if you know this already, then skip this, but creating videos, especially now since the camera is about 4 meters away from me, if you record this way, you need to record video and audio on 2 separate channels and then you overlay them. Because if the camera is too far away from you, then the inbuilt microphone will not capture you really well. It's going to be grainy and not good. And so therefore you need to record 2 separate channels and then you overlay them. And if you're just recording with an iPhone that you just mount on your table, you don't need to do that. It's probably good enough, but just simply try it out. You know, if it sounds good, then use it. If not, then use a lapel mic that connects to a second device. That is that. And when it comes to, if you ever are going to do interviews where you speak with 2 different speakers, and for example, you're interviewing somebody who's a relevant industry player or a customer and so on, you might want to consider buying a device that is called Zoom X6, I believe. I'm going to show it as an overlay image. And this device is used by the pros. It's going to be used by journalists on a regular basis. And it has 5 different inlets which you can then use and plug microphones in. I recommend Shure microphones, where you just simply plug them in, have a little stand, and on the table you then just mount them there and they record 2 different people. And the good thing is that it records on 2 separate channels so that you can get both of these recordings with the best possible quality. So that is the audio side of things. Now, another important question is the speaking. Some people are not natural speakers and it can be quite difficult for them to simply talk relatively freely about a certain topic. Now, first of all, it's kind of important that you develop this skill if you don't already have it. And if you're doing these videos, it's a good way of improving your public speaking, I would almost say, because you regularly see yourself. When you are editing, or if somebody edits it for you, you then see yourself in the video itself and you can then over time improve. I wouldn't sweat too much about, and worry too much about, oh my God, I use too many ums and ams, I'm using and so on. It's not a big deal, but over time you will notice it and you will improve, and it's going to greatly benefit you and your own sales and any other public speaking when you speak to journalists, for example. It's going to improve it. And so the question is whether you should use a teleprompter. Teleprompter is essentially a device that projects the text from below onto a glass plate behind which is the camera. The camera doesn't see the text floating, but you see the text and you can therefore just simply read. That's what newscasters do. And you can buy one of these things, or you can also build your own, which is really easy to do. It's completely crazy that people are selling these kind of things for £500 on Amazon. But you can of course build your own, and it's really simple. I would recommend you don't do that. The way I'm doing this video, for example, is that behind the camera I just have a few notes on a few sheets of paper, and then otherwise I'm talking freely. Why? Because first of all, if you want to create a script for a whole video, it's going to take you a lot of time. And then over time you will start resenting it, because every time you are running you want to publish a video, every time it's going to be a lot of writing. Don't do it. Second, it can sound robotic. The way you write is not the way you speak, and when you are reading a text from a screen, it will come across and people will feel that this is not really you talking, but that it's somebody's pre-written text. So if you are doing sales videos, for example, where every word counts and where you need to capture the attention, absolutely do it. I would recommend you use a teleprompter. But for these kind of regular, recurring weekly videos, definitely don't do it. Practice your public speaking skills, practice your free expression, make sure you drop the ums and ams, and you're done. So that was the teleprompter. Now, when it comes to editing, I very warmly recommend Adobe Premiere Pro. It's a paid tool. It costs, well, within the Adobe universe, if you just have an Adobe subscription, it costs £30, so it's not much. And Adobe Premiere Pro is absolutely spectacular. It's super intuitive. It teaches you many very, intelligent, in an intelligent way. It teaches you how to use specific features, and there's a ton of video tutorials whenever you hit a snag. So it's absolutely very much warmly recommended. I haven't used another one, to be honest, but I wouldn't know why I should. I was very happy with them. Now, and then finally, so this is all the technical equipment. When it comes to habits, I recommend you do one thing, namely that you have all your equipment ready to go, standing in a corner of your office, especially if you're not on the move very much. If you're on the move, it's a different story. But if you are regularly working from your office, or at least you have one day of work from your office, I would recommend you simply have it in one corner, have it ready to go. That's what I do. I have all the stuff in this corner of my office where I just simply take the cloth away that is over my camera, and I click, I hit the button and it starts recording, and I only have to move the softbox, and that's it. Because whenever I had to mount it first, whenever I had to rig it all up and so on, it was always like a bit of a drag to do it, and I was always a little bit hesitant to do it, knowing that I have to do it, even though it's only maybe 10 or 15 minutes. But this kind of psychological barrier, these days when I simply have a thought where I think, well, that could be an interesting one, I'm just switching on the camera and recording myself. So having this as a way to facilitate your habits is really useful. Cool, and that's it. That's where we got to the end of this video. So what we covered was the list of benefits that you get possibly from going to trade shows and events. And I've mentioned to you these benefits: there's market research, closing sales, pitching your sales script, building trust, building relationships, and getting validation for being on stage. All these benefits you can get from alternative means. Many of them you can get from having your own video channel where you publish useful content for your audience. You can also, when you are doing this, build a kind of a habit of producing regularly interesting content for your audience. And that is just, you are building your own asset that way. You are not renting somebody else's space like a trade show does, but you are first kind of optimizing your own environment, and then you can possibly expand your activities and go and do trade shows. By all means, at some point you have to start acquiring from elsewhere. But until your own house is in perfect order, I would recommend you to first do that. And especially when it comes to building a trusting audience, nothing works as well as publishing really interesting content on a regular basis. So thanks for watching. If this was useful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, follow Content 360 on Facebook and Twitter, or if you also want to know when new videos get published, you can go to content360.com/subscribe, and we will notify you when something new comes out. And if you have any questions, you can comment on this video. If there's anything you want me to cover in more depth and go into more detail, very happy to do that. And then finally, we at Content 360, we are a content marketing agency and education company. So if ever you feel like, gee, this video thing, that sounds great, I would love to do that, but I don't have the time, I don't want to spend the time editing and coming up with too many ideas and doing all the technical side of it, this is what we do. We can absolutely help you with that. We can help you craft both the strategy, both kind of the editorial process, as well as all the technical aspects of it. We can create your videos and edit your videos for you. So get in touch at michael@content360.com, and we'd be very happy to work with you and to build and grow and convert, most importantly, your online audience. Thanks very much for watching, and I see you next week.